Hello again, it's me again. Yeah, today or in this presentation, I would like to give an idea. We have developed and designed a best practice procedure in the transformation from LOVC to AVC. And I think the title of my presentation, it's a good description about this. It's not the destination, it's the journey, the way, how you go to AVC. A lot of people or companies, user of variant configuration, they nowadays know that the AVC, it's not that bad like in 4 years, 5 years ago. We have a lot of big improvements and enhancement, and we have additional functionalities. It's getting better and better. So, but the way to switch from LOVC, a lot of people, companies are afraid to make this step. But first of all, why should you use or switch from LOVC to AVC? We will have later on a presentation from Andreas, and he can describe it even better than me, but I have just written down a few things which are very interesting. First of all, you have a new user experience. You have new user UIs with new features within the configuration dialog. It's now in a Fiori app. You have new syntax elements. So the AVC engine is more or less concentrating on constraints, and you have better syntax elements by writing your object dependencies. We have an improved, and this is quite important for us. You have heard my previous presentation. They have improved the integration of variant tables. They are a powerful tool in the AVC world. Then I think this is, in my opinion, I have a lot of customers which are facing this problem, the switch from CTO to ETO within the configuration process. I have seen a lot of custom functions where they just shoot it, switch it later on by saving your sales document, and that is not that nice functionality, to be honest. But in this case, or with the AVC, you can decide during your configuration dialog and process, it's not a CTO anymore. We need to go to the ETO. Then the generation of material variants within the configuration dialog, this is also an improvement. And very important, if you're choosing a S/4HANA cloud system, there is just an AVC, and future developments will be exclusively for the AVC. I have also customers, they are dealing, for example, with new modules in S4. They are live in S4, they are using service functionalities. But if you are in the configuration world, LOVC is not available anymore. You need to switch to the AVC to use all these functionalities. Before we start and getting more in detail, the first question what you're asking yourself should be, is it a brown field or a green field? And then it's like, yeah, I'm a consultant. It's not, there is no answer for this question or a strict answer. It is always, it depends. It depends on your environment, on your structure, on your product model. So I have here an overview about arguments which could be for a brown field or which are strong for a green field. For example, if you're choosing the brown field, or what should be taken into consideration, that, for example, if you would like to transform or transist your product model to the AVC by using the SAP functionalities to do the transformation, then it is very important to have mainly SAP LOVC standard structures. Now you're thinking about what means standard structures. Standard structures means that you are not using that much P function, for example, or you have some crazy user exits and things what are outside of the SAP standard world. This is the second point, little to none P functions in operations. So it is very important to evaluate and analyze at the beginning what kind of customer or individual functions are you using. Is it possible to replace them by standard SAP object dependencies? Or are they really necessary? What kind of new functions do I have in the AVC world to replace these P functions? Then a high overlap of global object dependencies. If you're using, for example, procedures, one procedure in more than one product model, then it's also a good idea to do the transformation, because you will transform once, and you know if you have transformed once one product model into the AVC world, it will work for your other product models as well. And if you're already using a lot of constraints, because the new world will be based, or your base will be constraints in the object dependency world. In the green field, so this means you're starting from the scratch. You're creating your new product model. Sometimes it's a good chance for you as well, because if you think about your product models, you have them in usage for several years. And I think a lot of users, they have the feeling, yeah, we did this in the past. I would do it nowadays in a different way, but it's working, and never touch a running product model. This is very important as well. So if you have a high use of complex procedures, so you have a very complex product model, then it should be better to rethink, to reorganize your product model, and to use the best practices in AVC modeling to create a brand new product model in the new world. If you are using a lot of different individual functionalities, especially in the high level configuration, then you should think about to choose a greenfield approach. Or if you have very deep configuration structures with interactive configuration over multiple levels, then it might also make sense to rethink every level and every step. Because it could be on your top level, you have a quite simple and not that complex structure, but on the lower levels, it's getting even more complex, and you should stay in an LOVC world, but it's not working. So if you have a multi-level configuration, if you have on root level, you have your AVC, then the child levels, they need to have also the AVC configuration profile. All right, we have 7 steps, and I didn't find a real good translation for this from the German sentence. It's better to reach the goal with 6 steps than to break your legs in a big jump. So this is the reason why we have these 6 steps. We have a scoping, a planning phase, a realization, a testing, a go live, and even though a hypercare. It pretty much looks like a implementation project. So if you're dealing with S4 projects, then it's pretty much the same phases what you need to process during your project. So, and this is the reason why I'm saying this is not just switching. This is a project, because you have a product model and you're running it since several years. And this is the reason why you shouldn't think that is an easy step and this is just going, and you need to be aware of this, that it is a project. You need to do analysis, you need to make some changes, you need to plan, and then you have the realization, which is not that bad. You put the most effort in the previous phases. So first of all, we have the scoping phase. So there are a few questions which should be answered after this phase. The first, which is which data models are to be transformed into the AVC. Not every single one needs to be transformed. Yeah, if you think about on a long-term base, yeah, there will be the day where you need to switch completely to AVC, but at the beginning, you don't need to switch all product models into the AVC world. So then in which sequence, so from lower complexity up to higher complexity, or are you starting with a middle complexity? So in which sequence should the models be transferred or transformed into the AVC? And then also at the end of the day, the question, should all LVC data models be transferred to AVC? So as long if the LOVC is still available, you can work with the product model in this old LOVC world. So there's no, SAP is not forcing you yet to switch to the AVC. Then we have the planning phase, and this is quite important because there are a few points which needs to be worked out, and this is like a project. The sequence of processing, where do we start, where do we end? Which milestones need to be achieved during this realization phase? So you need to take a look, because we come to this step a bit later, or to this point a bit later. There are a few things to take in consideration. There might be also some rearrangements, some new modeling, some changing of your existing product model, and there's a lot of testing. Then which tools and instruments are to be used? So are you working only with the SAP standard tools, or are you working with different other tools? This is quite important to define your tools. And then also within the planning phase, you should define all the tests and test scenarios, because it's not only the functional test, you need to test your transformed product model in the complete process chain, because there are some difference, especially when we are thinking about the calculations. If you have calculations, you might have different results. You are even getting better results, but it's also depending if you have some data which needs to be processed to machines in your manufacturing area, then you need to check this on an E2E base and not only a functional test if the new configuration profile is valid, and if the object dependencies are just working. You need to check it within your process chain. Then we have the realization. Within the realization, we have a first task. It is the analysis of your product model. You need to have a deep analysis of your product model. You need to understand it. I know it from different customers that nowadays it's like, okay, we have created the product model 10 years ago, and nowadays there are several different modelers working on it, and a few things are not really understandable for the current modelers. So you need to have a deep analysis of your product models and an understanding of your product models. Then you have the conception. So if you figured out, identified some, for example, object dependencies which can't be transformed, then you need to have a concept how to replace them. If you decide to make the switch to the AVC, how to replace them to gather the same result at the end of the day of the configuration than before. Then you have the adaptation, modification, and correction phase. Within the realization, you need to make the adaptations, especially, for example, if you think about variant tables, but I would show you this on the next slide. Then you have the transformation and your functional testing. This is the realization phase. Here you have an overview about the different objects which can be transferred or which needs to be transferred from the LOVC to the AVC. You see the gray ones. There you can, for example, see the routing, bombs, materials, characteristics, classes are shared in both worlds. So there's no transformation at all. But we have our configuration profiles. We have an advanced mode. We have a classic mode, which needs to be transferred. We have our object dependencies, which also has the mode inside, where you need to choose between classic or advanced. And then we have our variant tables. The variant tables, they have actually 3 modes. The first of all is the classic mode, the LOVC mode. Means that you have all the functionalities which are used to have in the LOVC world. For example, you have 3 cells. You don't need to enter a value into a cell into your variant table. It can be blank. Then you have the mixed mode. Mixed mode means you can use the variant table in both worlds. So even though if you have a classic object dependency or an advanced object dependency, you can use it by not changing anything, but you have a high restriction level. Means there is no C tuples allowed in this mixed mode. There's no empty cell or wildcard allowed. So you have the highest restriction on variant tables. So you have a shorter, functional set of the variant tables. And then you have the advanced mode where you can use all the functionalities. So for example, instead of an empty cell, you have now the wildcard functionalities, for example. But when you're doing the transformation, and this is what you need to keep in mind, your configuration profile, your object dependencies will be transferred into the AVC world. System is, by using the SAP standard tools, the system is creating a copy of your object dependencies. We'll check if everything is conform for the AVC world, but the variant tables are still the same. So means you have a classic, usually you would have the classic mode in your variant table. It's not directly working in your new object dependencies. This means that you need to make you need to make changes, that it works in a mixed world, so you can use it in the classic object dependency or also in the advanced one, or it gives you the chance to use the new syntax elements and the functions of the new advanced variant tables to create or to make changes on the object dependency and also make changes on your variant table. And this is quite important. So this is what you need to keep in mind, because when you switch from LOVC to AVC, you have the possibility to release everything. But the new object dependency with the old variant table will be locked by the system because the syntax check failed due to the classic variant table. All right. Here we have also some steps and some screenshots about the transition workbench of SAP. We have actually, you need to use actually 4 transaction codes to have a complete transition from the LOVC to the AVC. And here you have an order that you first define your transformation scope, you do the analysis, you do the transformation, you make some adjustments from LOVC to AVC, you release your AVC data models, and at the end of the day, you can also use a transaction to transfer your material variants from the LOVC, the old configuration profile, to the new one. The testing phase, I mentioned it already, it's quite important, not doing only your functional tests. You need to do it on the E2E basis. It means create your sales order or your sales document, process this document and check whether everything is fine or not. You need to go through the complete chain, because at the moment we are in the low level, we are still in the LOVC world, but there are some changes. And especially when we are having new or a different result of the configuration, you might get also different results in the low-level configuration. So this is the reason why the testing from E2E is quite important. The go live is quite easy, to be honest. When you did your complete testing and everything is fine, you can just switch. You can do it by using ECN, and we have also a fallback scenario. And I'm not sure who was on the customer council. We had a confusion about the usage of the configuration profiles. It is that the configuration profiles, you will have both in your product model, but in a sales order, if you have a already released AVC configuration profile, the system will prefer the AVC one. So it will always take the AVC one. If you figure out after your documents that it's not working that well, for example, you have multiple variants to choose from your configuration, and a few are not really working, everything else is fine, and your first documents are okay, you have also the possibility, because the LOVC configuration profile wouldn't be deleted, you have always the possibility as a fallback or safety net to use a ECN and to lock the AVC one, because at the moment you can just use one for your documents, and even though if you use the ECN to lock your AVC, then the first created sales documents will still be processable in this world due to the deadline of your ECN, your validity date. But you can then proceed with new documents in your LOVC world back again. So this is your fallback scenario, that you have the possibility to switch back by using the ECN, lock the AVC configuration profile, and use or release again the LOVC one. But nevertheless, in the modeling environment, you can still test with both. So you can always make the choice, but in the sales document, the system would even, or wouldn't ask you which one you would like to choose. If an AVC one has been released, it will be taken automatically by the system. All right, hypercare means, yeah, at the end of the day, it's not like everything is finished when you have the go live and everything is working. If you have some minor or further optimizations and corrections, they should be carried out in the hypercare phase after you go live. If you have made the decision, yeah, we can go live, and the testing was positive, you have then the possibility in the hypercare phase to do again analysis, to make some reorganizations, and yeah, to modify your AVC product model. Here you have an overview about the transaction codes, what I'm using or what the SAP is providing for the transformation. You have your transition workspace, what you need to create. Then you're working completely from the transition workbench, and at the end of the day, you can do almost everything from the transition workbench. You can check your product models. You can create your copies from there. You can, even though for this reason you need to make a switch, if you would like to compare the results, you have also an additional transaction where you can make a comparison between your LOVC product model and the results in, for example, a sales order or production order with your new AVC. And you have also a transaction to switch the material variants. So at the end of the day, there are not that many transaction codes you need to know and to use to do a transformation from LOVC to AVC. Thank you.